Crack a ball, mate.
I'm going to crack this one first, so I don't be...
No, let's run that sound. Let's run that sound. Courtney Atkinson, mate, you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you making some time for us.
Yeah, man. Well, you're local, so it's easy, hey? Just drop the kids off school and I'm straight
Call
down
in.
here.
Are you busier nowadays than when you were an Olympian?
Yeah, man, absolutely. You know, like every day I pinch myself kind of going, how did I end up, you know, the things that I end up doing these days off being an athlete, you know, never ceases to amaze me, and every day's new, every day's a new opportunity, and you know, I just kind of follow what I love doing, and it seems to roll on into some pretty interesting stuff. Yeah,
like if you look at your Instagram page, it looks like, just if you don't click into anything and you see all the squares, it looks like a tourism globe campaign. Like your page is advertising to potential aliens that would want to come and visit the world.
Yeah.
Earth.
Well, at the moment, it's Queensland, because that's who I'm working for, right? Tourism Queensland. But
you just did the like New Zealand race, and then you've done like the Japan stuff. So you've done so much crazy cool stuff over the last few years.
Yeah. Well, I haven't updated my page in about 2 weeks. I've been so busy at the moment. Like, I like to try and do it myself, and put up. I suppose the idea of just putting things up for the sake of putting things up really kind of pees me off with the whole social media world, right? That the fact that people feel like they have to be putting something up every day. So like I try and keep it, I suppose, interesting. And, you know, if it's something that I'd want to see, I kind of put it up. If it isn't, you know, I send it to my mum. But pretty much every day I'm looking at things going, how can I do something that's, you know, in my ballpark, but doing something different, right? And that's how I kind of live day to day at the moment is, you know, we're all out there. We've all got cameras. We're all doing sports. We're all doing podcasts. We're all doing whatever it is. And it's just how can you know, stand out in the crowd a little bit and but still kind of stay true to yourself and love what you do. So,
well, that's kind of like the weird thing with social media is it was like almost like this democracy of, like before it was you had the radio, and then like I can't remember who I was talking about this on the podcast with, but saying like, I think it was Todd, where I was saying like he's going to start doing some vlogging of his racing because he's going to the US, and he's like, I said to him, well, before, like 10 years ago, if you walked in and you said, I think it'd be cool for people to watch my racing, you'd have to like go to a TV channel and you'd have to make a pitch and you'd have to shoot a pilot, and then they'd say yes or no, and then they'd try and find a slot in the day to play your show, and the chances are that it's just not going to happen. So like almost your fate is in other people's hands and then the networks, and you've got to kind of fit in this puzzle. But nowadays it's just like same with this podcast, like I'm not going to Nova and going, hey, I know these athletes and I got these cool friends that I'd like to talk to. Can you put me on your radio? They go, nah. Like, you know what I mean? But nowadays, so it was kind of like this beautiful thing in that regard where like anyone could do anything. But then on the flip side of that is there's so much shit that you have to wade through now of like selfies, duck faces, like there's so much bullshit. So it's like, it was like a great thing in one sense, but then on the other side, it's just flooded with so much crap that we don't really need to see.
Oh, 100%. But I mean, that's the way of the world, right? You can't complain. You just got to roll with it. And for me, the beauty of it all for me was that as an athlete, you know, I spent 20 years of my life as an building up to being an Olympic athlete, and your day just revolves around training, sleeping, eating. Like, it's pretty mundane. After the life of an athlete in the past, what do you do? If you can't compete, you've got nothing to really, I suppose, go out there and show. But
I guess you only really get to go into TV land if you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah. And there's only, you know, a few spots there. But forget about all that. Now you've got the opportunity as athletes to go out and I suppose what you did competitively, show that in a way of not recreation, but show it in a way that, you know, you want to express yourself. So, you know, the outdoor industry, 10 times bigger than any sports industry I could imagine, right? Just for me personally, coming from the background of being, a triathlete, endurance sports and all this, going into the world of just, exploring, expedition, hiking, adventure racing, all these things that encompass everything I love doing, but in a way that's just heaps more fun, heaps more adrenaline. The market's exponentially bigger, and it's fun. In the end, that's what it comes down to, right? You've got to follow what you love doing, and going out there and exploring and finding new things, finding new places. And everyone else wants to kind of follow it right these days. And you talked about Instagram and all that type of stuff earlier on. And like it or not, people just want to go out there and find places that they can then go and show others that they've been to. And in a weird way, I kind of like to think we're a little bit of a catalyst to helping, that industry kind of evolve.
It's funny. I think that from when I first, when I moved to America in maybe 2012, I think, or 2011, I can't remember. It just didn't seem like people were that fit. There wasn't this outdoor fit thing now where it's now it's full hikestagram, just people wanting to do all this outdoors. But I think even if you go back to 2012, we didn't really have that culture. It was way more underground. When did you because you'd know more than what I would about it. Did you see it starting to emerge and go hang on, people are really starting to get interested in this kind of adventure, outdoor sort of lifestyle?
Yeah, I didn't know too much about it, right? Because I was kind of boxed into this little world of, real elite athletics. And I think my first real experience was, and this is going back to the Mark Webber challenge, which was an adventure race that Mark put on down in New Zealand over 5 days. And pretty much, you had all these hardcore adventure teams do it, race. It was 4, 5, 6 hours across the best parts of New Zealand, but he'd invite in all these kind of other athletes from other sports. So I raced with our Olympic gold medalist Kenny Wallace in a team, and was introduced into adventure racing. And mate, I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. So from that day, I kind of always had this. I was still racing in the Olympics in triathlon, but I had this skew of wanting to kind of really go and play in this other area. And kind of once I finished my competition, that's where I realised I can go and do this. And then that's when kind of I suddenly realised,
you open Pandora's box in a way.
Oh wow! You don't have to be kind of pigeonholed into this one aspect. You can. I've been not whitewater kayaking, but kayaking down rivers with rapids, and mate, I never was in a boat before I even started doing this. So it's all new stuff to me. But I suppose coming from that background of endurance athletics, you pick up things pretty quick, right? And I think generally people just love seeing the outdoors, and when you're stuck, and I can understand that, right? Yeah. And the last week, I've gone off the grid for the last 2 weeks because I've literally been stuck in front of a computer, editing stuff and kind of catching up on a lot of work. And, I'm kind of getting stir crazy at the moment. And so I understand that feeling of I just want to get out and go again. I need to get out and travel, get out and do something. And that's what everyone's kind of feeling every day, with a busy life, busy world. And that's where people are looking at, I suppose, not myself so much, but just looking to, other places to find inspiration as to what we can do. I had a mate come around yesterday and he's like, if someone just sat, I don't want to go and do the research. I just want someone to lay out in front of me. I'd love to go and kayak this river, but I just want to turn up, someone to accommodate me, someone to train me, someone to do this. And the end output is I have this great adventure. And I think that's kind of where the whole outdoor industry is going, is there's a lot more what maybe was once just kind of like base camp Everest hikes, or these tours where you had Sherpas and everyone helping you. That's kind of now starting to go across the board, where there's trail running, kayaking adventures, and it's really bringing kind of a more extreme nature of tours to people who want to go out there and do it. So mate, it's only going to keep booming.
Yeah, it's crazy. I guess maybe it's just got to do with the information age as well. We know a lot more about diet. We know a lot more about exercise. We know a lot more about what we need in terms of like functioning, and I think people are now looking for like happiness more than ever. So I think, yeah, you sort of enter this age of, you know, of information and knowledge, and then it's like people are sort of going like, oh, I can't just work in this cubicle, I can't just go to Westfields on the weekend. Like, that's not how like a healthy life is sort of achieved. So I think it's like, yeah, you're getting so much more information. And then, you know, people like yourself and all these people in like that outdoor industry are really like, I guess, yeah, trailblazing and leading a new way for people. And I guess it's
great for society, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's not going to be for everyone. There's obviously demographics who you're never going to change, but there's a whole demographic out there at the moment of people wanting to be healthy, be fit, travel, you know, get off the grid a little bit, experience new things, and you know, that's great for just a healthy society. So, you know, when you look at it, I'd much rather be kind of, I suppose, endorsing that lifestyle and you know, just realistically showing, I shouldn't say fake things, but just showing kind of that whole idea of like we started off this conversation, is showing things just because, you know, you went down the road to make something happen and get out there and make it happen and put it up there, instead of actually going out there, experiencing it, and that way you're actually, you know, I'm doing this for myself. I mean, I can share it with others, and in the end, that's a kind of a little bit of my business. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going out there to do these things because I love doing them, and you know, I'll keep doing that at the moment.
I think that's where a lot of people that have success, and I think that a lot of people, if they're looking to do something like, I guess what you're doing, I guess anything, a lot of people try and put the cart before the horse, and they're like, what could I do to be successful? Whereas you're going, what do I want to do for me? And then when you attack something so full on and so passionately, and, you know, you really believe in what you're doing, it's almost like actually getting the success from it, and, you know, working with tourism boards, and essentially you get paid to travel. It's like, that wasn't the original goal of it all. You know what I mean? It's absolutely. Like that came second. And I think a lot of people maybe get that backwards to, like what you said, I'll just go down the road and post this and tag a couple brands, and, you know, hopefully something will come of it. But it's like, if you just do it for that genuine reason of like, dude, I'm just going to go and explore and make this happen. And then, you know, maybe I'll post a couple photos. So it's almost like, cart before the horse kind of scenario.
And I think a lot of people forget, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, how much work is involved prior to something happening. So for me, there's no way I could be operating and doing what I'm doing at the moment unless I had the credibility of 20 years.
Yeah, you're an Olympian.
Not just an Olympian, but 20 years working, you know, my butt off as an elite athlete, making my living out of absolute really pain. You know, in a weird way, I kind of think I deserve a little bit of, you know, cruisiness at the end of all that. But no, in all seriousness, like that started as a 5-year-old at a swimming pool here on the Gold Coast. You know, my whole life was literally this, just like one big job to this end goal of, you know, being this elite athlete, right? People forget that. Yeah. So they see what you do now and think, you know, why do you get to do that? Why, you know, how are you getting to do this? How, you know, I'm off in Japan running around mountains or something like that. Like, why? Well, the answer is, I've been doing this for 25 years. It's nothing new. It's just a little bit of a new direction. Yeah. You know, in a time in my career where, you know, I've had to, obviously, my Olympic career's ended, and I've, you know, had this new direction to go off into the outdoor world. But the fact of the matter is, when I plan things, I'm still looking at how can I do this in a way that, you know, I'm an athlete first and foremost. So how can I do what I'm doing? You know, what records can I break? Like last year, running around the, you know, for those who don't probably wouldn't know, last year one of my main projects I did was I ran up the tallest mountain in each state of Australia, bar South Australia, because we had a bit of a problem with permits. But in 7 days, so one per day, one mountain in Australia each day. Now, without running bloody quick, I was never going to get that done in the way I did it, you know. So my goal in that, you know, a lot of people have gone out there and kind of just done it as a travel, you know, hiking through the night and all that type of thing. But we were literally racing up that mountain and breaking the record going up the mountain, the ascent as quick as possible, or getting really close to it on some of the mountains that fresh Olympians had run before. That's an athletic project. It's not like, you know, your typical tourism kind of, you know, I'm walking around with my mobile phone, standing up the top of a mountain taking a pic. You know, I've absolutely
You're under the pump.
Destroyed myself going up there, you know, needing to work out recovery, and that's all extra to just the travel and the locations and everything like that. So, dude,
that's what I wanted to mention. That so we didn't even go all the way to the top of Bartle Frere. So Granted, it was 37 degrees the day that we went up there.
So Bartle Frere's in Cairns, right? So the tallest mountain in Queensland?
Yep. So it's the tallest mountain in Queensland. And we had a conversation about like when you went up there and doing the record. So we were staying at Az's place in Mabinda and we were talking about it. Then I had one of my friends from the States come over. And then we were down there riding and it was too wet to ride the moto. So we were like, you know what, let's just go do Broken Nose. So you've got Bartle Frere, which is the main
Hang on. I recall the message was, let's go and do Bartle Frere.
Yeah, we did. We ended up doing Broken Nose. But so we got it. You'd never seen like it on a clear day either. Like, because it's always been like really cloudy. And man, the selfie that we got at the top, I sent it to you, it was just pristine. You could see out of the ocean. But we went up there, it was like ridiculously hot, and it took us, I think it took us 3 hours to the top of Broken Nose. And you got to the top of Bartle Frere, which is an extra 2.5 kilometers to this, because it's 15 round trip to Bartle and 10 from Broken.
10 from Broken, yeah.
So it's got to be about 2.5 Ks extra. So we took 3 hours to get to the top of Broken Nose, and you took an hour and 40 to get to the top of Bartle, which is an extra 2.5 Ks. So that's moving. It's we were looking at the clock, right? And I think we got to, you know, the campsite where you turn, where you got the left to go up Broken Nose and then the right to go to Bartle. And then there's like that big river sort of thing there. You know that I'm talking about?
I got lost there the first time, yeah.
Oh, did you?
No, we're not lost, but yeah, off track.
Well, I think we got to there in like an hour or 2 hours and 10 minutes. So we got to there and you'd already summited and started coming down. Yeah. So like it's full on to do what you did, like just putting it into perspective. And it was hard. It was hard for us to just walk up there. We had packs with some water and food and stuff like that. So, I mean, we weren't trying to break records up there, but like that was hard, man. That's a thick jungle. You're on all fours. Like that's not a hiking trail where you can just like walk your way up there. Like you've actually got to climb up that ascent. Like it was full on for people that to do it in an hour 40 minutes is ridiculous.
I think it's the hardest in Australia anyway. You know, there's bigger, in New Zealand you've got obviously taller, around the world you've got taller, bigger, but this climb, it's my favourite just because of the nature of it. You're at sea level, so it's only 1,600 high, which in the grand scheme of things isn't nothing gnarly, right? But you're at sea level, so you've literally got, in 7 kilometres you go up a mile. And it is that thickest forest. It's like a spider web of it looks roots like across the ground. Yeah, you're literally climbing up some sections. I'm not stopping running up that whole thing. Yeah, you know, like on some routes, obviously you're climbing, but literally I am never trying to walk up that whole climb. But for me, I've done it 4 times now in the last kind of year and a bit. Every time it's wide out at the top, right? Yeah. I've never seen it on a clear day. So last time I was up there and I was near Babinda, I had planned to climb it again just because I thought it was going to be a nice day. Cut again. Yeah. Didn't bother this time. But, you know, it's kind of become my, I suppose, benchmark climb around Australia, just because, one, it's just a gnarly climb to try and run up. But there's whole, you know, obviously Strava now, and you've got all these records and people being able to kind of go out on that course you've done or someone else has done before you and race you. So there's this whole notion of now that's a climb that I think's got a really good pedigree of racing up. And each year the locals are racing up, and then I'll try and come back in. So it's got this really good vibe going about it. But I love the place up in Cairns.
Yeah, and that just the jungle, like that's real jungle. Like
you can't explain it to people
unless
you're in there. You really can't explain it to people. I think one of my mates who went in the first day when we were just checking out the first bit of the climb, you know, the wait a whiles, so we're talking about pretty much a vine, but it's got all these
little like fish hooks on it, basically.
Pretty much like little barbs on it, and as you're running you don't see them, and they can just flick across your face and literally rip your face open. So the first time we went in there, my mate, he was running behind me with a camera and we're just getting some pre-shots, and literally got his whole face just straight off. But that's just one thing you're facing up there. And then obviously up the top you've got the big the boulders, which are all most of the time wet, which is quite a treacherous little climb up there, and you're by yourself, no one around, so
no one's keeping up with you.
no.
Well, it's funny, like the wait a whiles, because we have a lot of people in America that listen that would have never seen them or know what they are.
It is what it's said, wait a while, because once it grabs you, you're waiting a while till you get it off.
Yeah, and especially like you're lucky in a sense if it grabs your skin to where like you can get them out easier, but if it grabs your clothes and stuff, like it rips your clothes and it's just stuck. And you've just got to individually pick out these little fish hooks. And when we went up there, we got it was before the first river crossing that you've got to cross. Yep. And we found like a 10, 11 foot scrub python, like just chilling on the thing. So like I kind of got my Steve Irwin on, grabbed that little fella. And the whole time Nick that was with us, he's who I stay with in the States when I'm there. And he's just tripping on snakes. And like before we saw that snake, right? So we caught a snake at Az's place that night, and he'd never seen a snake before in the wild, never held one. So I like jumped in the creek and grabbed a spotted python, and I just gave it to him, and he's like, didn't know what to do. So then he's like, is there going to be snakes on the way up there? And I was like, yeah, probably. And then he's like, any that could kill you. And I was like, well, like probably. Technically yes, but I don't know. Like I haven't seen much that could kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then 20 minutes in, 10-foot python, and Nick was just on red alert the whole time. But it was funny. Like he actually, I think the climb got so hard that he forgot about snakes until the bottom where we saw that snake, and he's like, "Oh, dude, I forgot about snakes this whole time." Because he was just spending so much time like worrying about the actual climb itself. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. I reckon that was one of the runs I did up there was the worst I've ever been attacked by leeches. And
we didn't get that at all.
Probably attacked is the wrong word, but literally I was one run up there in the wet, I was pulling leeches off just to the point of not counting. I mean, by the time I got to the top, I'd been 20, 30... 40, 50, and that's not exaggerating. Yeah, just literally pulling leeches off non-stop. So
I don't know what you're talking about, man. The day we went was perfect.
Anyway, what's next? We'll get on to something else. We're still talking about Battle for Air.
What I was gonna say, that trip as well, we did. This is what really, I guess you think like, I'm pretty fit and this and that. We went on that ride, me, you, and Glenn, and we took e-bikes. And you were on your cross-country bike. And we were like charging up the World Cup downhill fire road, and you were just like pumping it out. Then you got up the top, got the drone out, there was just sweat pouring off you, and all of this was happening because you had to be back to bungee jump with your bike.
Bungee jump the bike.
AJ Hackett in like half an hour. And I was just like, I got home from that little ride, and I mean, I was on an e-bike, and I was like pretty tired from it. I was like, man, I don't know how Courtney does this. So yeah, to your point before of saying that this isn't just something that I guess anyone could go and do it, but the kind of things that you're doing on these adventures, there's super extreme level of fitness that's sort of required to do it.
Yeah, well, that day, like you saw us, I met you for the beginning of that day. So we're up at just after sunrise, up to the top of World Cup course. And to be honest, I was kind of crapping myself more on the cross-country bike coming down the World Cup course and bungee jumping the mountain bike off, like that's the easy part.
Yeah.
But there, bungee, I think I was straight back in a car.
Because you went to Fitzroy.
I might have been out on the reef by that afternoon.
Yeah,
or out
you went
on
out
Fitzroy.
to Fitzroy, yeah.
Yeah, and then that afternoon, a chopper out to the reef. We filmed out at the reef swimming, which was bloody magic up in that part of the world. And then by that afternoon, we're back on Fitzroy, and yeah, mate, life.
And then the next day,
crazy.
you were down in Babinda to try and do the falls up there. Josephine Falls.
Yep. Back at Babinda, had a look at Babinda, and then Josephine, and then fly back to the Goldie. So
full on. Because, I mean, we've been trying to do this podcast for a while, so that's how busy you've been. I think just since we've been even trying to do this podcast, you've done the Cairns thing, you've done the New Zealand thing with Maddie. Like, you've been all over the map. Yeah,
well, at the moment, I mean, I suppose with Commonwealth Games here on the Gold Coast in we're talking like only 35 days or something now, so it's like right on our doorstep. So I'm doing this job with promoting Queensland while the Commonwealth Games is on. So... Yeah. It kind of, it's been a super busy time because I've literally been trying to get to all these places around Queensland before the Games is on, so I can show people, what the Queensland experience is from not your typical, I suppose, tourism point of view. This is actually how to experience Queensland, and if you kind of like that idea of outdoors, adventure, a bit of adrenaline, whatever it is, definitely don't get your pretty dolly pics there's no sliders going with me out where I go, but so life's been super busy, and then the Commonwealth Games is going to hit, and prior to that, obviously there's this baton that goes, the Commonwealth Games baton goes around Queensland, so next month I'm off with the baton around to these locations again, and we're going to take all the international media, a lot of the international media who are going to come in are going to go to certain places, and we'll show them Queensland, try and get them to experience, a little bit of what Australia has to offer, which, for me is really cool because, after all these years of, I suppose, me being the product of the athletic side of it, I'm getting to experience all these things that I've done for years, but on a different level. So to go and take media out and show them, take them bungee jumping, take them out on motorbikes or whatever it is, in my backyard, it's not too bad.
When did your Olympic dreams start? Like you said before, it was like 5 years old. Like, was it literally 5 years old where you said, I want to be an Olympian?
Oh, man, I can't remember that long, but I know there's a photo. This is like the typical photo or video. I think Scotty James, our snowboarder, had like him singing the national anthem as a young kid. He was posting the other day before his snowboard run. I've got this photo of me being... it would have been around 4 or 5 with an Olympic flag behind me with a birthday cake, so it's a byproduct of obviously the way the kid or myself is tuned, but I think it's also a byproduct of parents motivating you. I never think my parents were forceful, but there was definitely your parents are pushing you down this way that's you're good at, but you need a lot of help. People, it doesn't just happen. There's a whole team behind you, and it starts at a young age. But I mean, as far as talking about athletics, how did I get to, I suppose, probably one of the more difficult endurance sports in an Olympic Games or across the world now, endurance sports, Ironman, races across New Zealand, whatever it is. That development of an aerobic system to become an endurance athlete, started at 4 or 5. You're never going to catch up down the road, and that's why we produce so many good swimmers here in Australia, is the fact that 5, 6, 7-year-olds, they're training like full on every morning, every night, down laps up down that pool. It's just kind of, I suppose when I grew up, it was more, you didn't have a lot of choices of sport, so it was a way, it was just kind of, that's what you did, right? You swam. I think today's kids probably have a little bit more choices.
I think even outside of sport, they've got like video games, they've got like a lot of movies, TV, like all that. There's a lot to keep kids indoors more than what there was when you were a kid, or even when I was a kid. But even from a sports point of view, the next Olympics in Tokyo is going to be a really interesting transition, because then you're going to bring in things to the Olympics like skateboarding, rock climbing, surfing. When you got kids at home who in the past have watched the Olympics and got inspired by runners and swimmers and all that, if they've got the choice of going to the Olympics to do surfing, or I aspire to be in the Olympics for surfing, or I aspire in the Olympics because I want to do the marathon, like if I'm a kid, I know what I'm going to choose. So it's going to be a really interesting turning point, I think, because it's like where action sport has finally come full mainstream, and it's going to give kids a choice of
what they want to do to achieve, I suppose, what in the past they've been only seen, they only know what they see, right?
Yeah.
So if they start seeing these action sports now as a mainstream alternative, which they are, it's going to put a lot of pressure on kind of the traditional Olympic sports, which, you know, I'm fascinated to see what happens after Tokyo. I think it's going to be it's going to be a real first for the Olympics, but I think it's going to be a real turning point for sport in general.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, you don't really want to suffer the way you have to suffer to do the sports that you do. Like, there's certain sports in the Olympics, like triathlon and marathons and all of those endurance, long distance. You just have to suffer, and you don't just have to suffer in the event. You have to suffer every single day in training for years and years and years. Like, and then, yeah, you go surfing, you can do it with your mates, and you can do like skateboarding. You can sit down at the skate park and, you know, wear cool clothes and kind of, you know, be on Instagram the whole time you're doing it. So it's
Instagram,
like,
that's what you're thinking. I was thinking about hanging with mates. I mean, if you think about us mountain biking, and we have, you know, a really diverse crew of drivers, moto guys, fabricators. Like, we have the most, you know, it's a great crew, but we go out there because it's fun and you can hang out and it's mountain biking, right? And there's a little bit of adrenaline. I always come back to this fact that we all still like to, you know, fun comes in at the expense. Fun is kind of generated by being, you know, out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's two types of comfort zones. There's the one where you're in pain because something's hurting you so much, or there's the adrenaline side of being out of your comfort zone. So I think, you know, it is the easy option to get that kind of fulfillment, but and I think, you know, running long distances, triathlon, cycling on the road or whatever it is, it kind of provides that fulfillment, but in a lot more taxing and a harder way. So, you know, it's probably human nature just to kind of drift across to that side of like, I can get that same kind of excitement and that same kind of adrenaline and wake my body up with that feeling of doing something else. And plus I can be with my mates. So I know, like, when I look at sport now, I think that's kind of the way everything's moving. You know, mountain biking's just booming.
It's exploded.
Like, unbelievable of what, because once someone tries it, I think they're kind of thinking, well, why am I riding my road bike when I can be doing this as a recreation? You know, completely different scenario if you want to be a Tour de France rider and you're a kid who wants to grow up and do that. But if you're just out there riding bikes for fun and fitness, why would you be fighting cars when you can be out there in the forest having a ball? And, you know, that's what I'm talking about with the challenges traditional sports are going to face moving forward.
Yeah, the big thing too that I've been thinking about a lot lately when it comes to mountain biking is, you've got that social aspect, you've got the adrenaline aspect, you've got, you know, those sorts of things. But I've never, like, I would say that I'm pretty risk averse. Like, I'm not really out there trying to send it sort of thing. But I think that what I get out of going as fast as I can go down the hill is, I think that it narrows in your focus so clear that it's almost like a form of meditation. Because, like, what's the end goal of meditation is to almost like free your mind of all other thoughts and detach in a way. But when you're on a mountain bike, like, have you done Clifton's in Cairns yet?
No.
So it's like the top of Coranda, and I use that as a good example, probably because that's a really hard one for me to do because I haven't done it a lot. So it's really technical. There's roots and rocks, and then the tree line's so narrow, it's just bar width wide the whole time. And if it's wet at all, it's just so slippery. So it's 100% of your focus. And that is, I think, that same experience of, you know, what people kind of look for in like meditation or whatever. It's because there's not one room for thought other than external thought, because if you have that external thought, it's over. And then there's real physical consequences to doing that when you are kind of trying to go fast. So I think, there's like, that's sort of something that, because I've always been like, man, I'm just not really like an adrenaline person. Like, I don't want to go bungee jumping. I don't want to skydive. So I wouldn't classify myself as that. So it's like, I think there is that element of just like taking everything away as well.
Well, you can't think of anything else, can you? I mean, that's the whole notion of even distance running. Eventually, that's what happens when it gets hard. Or you're thinking about, you zone out. And that's why, you know, people, that's the endorphins of sport, right? And I was running this morning, and I went for a pretty much when I'm time poor, I go out and I just do 12K at a pace which I can maintain 12K at like a solid pace. So it's not like flat out, but it's definitely not easy. And what it does is it actually makes me switch into kind of my body into a sensation where I'm like, I'm stuffed, but I haven't actually killed myself.
Yeah.
And I was running this morning and I was thinking, you know what? Like, if I don't do this, I wake up feeling like crap. You know, and it's a way that I've probably a lot of history in myself of I can do that running, but it's the same sensation that I'm just zoning out. I'm putting my body through I suppose a process where it's just cleaning itself out. It's feeling good because it's exercising, but I'm putting myself in that slight bit of uncomfort zone to make it feel kind of like 100% awake. And then I get on with my day. And mountain biking, I think, like what you're saying, it provides that same sensation where you have to concentrate so much on what you're doing, especially going downhill, that you kind of zone out of everything else. So when you come back off the mountain bike, you're all pumped up with adrenaline. You're just ready to get on with your day and get, you can just leave it and get on with your day. Whereas I think, I'm not a big gym junkie person, so I don't get those same feelings from the gym because... Yep. For me, you don't quite kind of get over that hump of, I had to completely switch off. You're doing your reps, or if you're doing something like short sprints at the beach or whatever it is, you kind of do it and then you're back talking and thinking about things again. Yeah. But, I look for those things where you have to just kind of completely forget what the rest of the world's doing at that point in time. Yeah,
because there is sort of like a tipping point of every ride, even
that when probably sounded really, really out there.
What's that?
Oh, that whole explanation I just gave, because
I think it's so true.
Well, it's hard to explain sometimes. Like, people always go to me. Sorry, I got off the point a bit, but people always go to me. How can you run so far? How can you run so hard? Or what do you get out of it? And it's really hard to explain. And that's what I was trying to get across, is that there's something I can only get from running. So that's why I'll always run. I've done swimming, I've done kayaking, I've done, obviously riding bikes a lot and all that. But in the end, I'll always just run, because that's where I get that, main fulfillment out of it. And, there's a million sayings out there about running, about what the endorphins and what it ends up giving you. But it's really difficult to just explain how that makes me feel. And I wish... there's so many recreation running's huge, and I think that's the reason for it. But it's hard to explain to non-runners that sensation, because they just think, you're kind of batshit crazy. Why do you go and run all the time? That probably didn't make it any clearer, did it?
I definitely get it. And I think that, like, I've been saying to Ricky, like, with some of the stuff that we've been doing with, just working out and things, it's like, I'm looking for a hard reset. It's like, that's sort of my way of explaining it. Like, you go into something to where all your focus is on it, you can't think of anything else, and then all of a sudden it stops. Like, and then you just get this feeling of like, so you come into it with all this baggage on you. You've got stress, you've got work, you've got a deadline, you've got a podcast, you've got to record. All this shit is like, that's on the front of your mind. And then you go and you do this thing, and then momentarily you dump it, and then it's like all that's gone. And then you come back and it's like you've had this hard reset, and then it's like you can start to slowly take things back in, instead of it all just being on you at the one time like it was before you started the activity. You get a reset and you come back, and then it comes at you more slowly. So it's like, if you do that every day to where you get that hard reset, it just feels like it makes it easier for things to come at you, as opposed to like, say you go a couple days without running and you don't get that kind of hard reset. Everything's on you the whole time. So for those whole few days you're wearing that baggage, there's no point where you can actually shed that. So I don't know if that makes sense either.
Oh no, we'll take that. That sounds like a better explanation.
That's sort of how I've been kind of thinking of it. I wanted to ask you about, with the Olympics, the Winter Games going on now, and there's been a couple of people say, and Rogan said it on his podcast, about how he just thinks the whole IOC is just bullshit, of basically making athletes that dedicate their entire lives compete for free while they make billions and billions of dollars. And companies all like, so, companies like Samsung and Coca-Cola and all these companies can make millions and millions of dollars off the back of what you've spent your entire life doing. So, I mean, I guess as someone I don't have a horse in that race, like I can have an opinion, but as a guy that's never going to be Olympian, Like, you've been there, you've done it, you've done the road miles and the work to get there and competed. How does it sort of sit with you?
To be honest, I've never really thought about it in that way. As an athlete, or in my sport at least, you know, it might be a bit different from snowboarding and surfing and these professional sports that are now just being included in the Olympics. But
I think too, you look at Shaun White though, he's made, like, he's not stressing on money, but a guy that's doing triathletes, like, a lot of dudes would have to have a job. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's still a circuit, but as an athlete, when I look at the Olympics, I just always looked at it as, you know, you accepted it for what it was, but everyone wants to do it. It's like you turn around, it's like having something that everyone wants to be at the party, right? And you nearly pay to be there. Well, that's what we're fighting for. Everyone wants to be at the party. So you don't, like, as just another member of that whole scenario and that whole big Olympic scene, you're not really thinking about that at the time. You know, you just go with the rules, you do it, you're part of it. It makes sense what you're saying 100%, but mate, there's plenty of opportunities outside the Olympics. I like the idea of keeping the Olympics as it is, and I mean, it is evolved. There's no doubt that, and I was talking about the whole action sports side of the Olympics now. It's evolving, and as it evolves, all of these scenarios and sponsors and everything else will probably evolve with it. But, you know, I've come from the traditional sports, the swimming, the running, and the whole idea of the Olympics being that one pinnacle, where for those sports, that's the most important thing. You're competing for your country.
Yeah.
That's, in the end, that's the number one rule, and that's why the Olympics was so special, is that you're competing for your country. So you're competing for more than yourself. And if you start bringing in commercialization to that scenario as an athlete, like from my point of view, you're starting to throw too many cookies in the pie.
And you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Too many, whatever.
Yep.
Cookies in the jar, whatever you want to talk about. But I mean, yeah, for sure, someone's making a buck out of it. It's like any business, right? If the model works, it's for probably the athletes have to stand up for it. But the fact of the matter is, everyone's trying to fight just to be there. There's a few key, you know, high profile athletes out there who can probably speak their mind a little bit and talk about those things. But for majority of it, there's probably 20 athletes at that point in time who probably could have been in that. Say, take triathlon for example. There could be 3 athletes at the Olympics, 3 men competing at the Olympics. There's probably 20 guys who just missed out. And there's probably another 2,000 guys who would, you know, break down walls to try and be part of that 20. So it's a really hard scenario, I think, to you know, talk about. It's easy to talk from the top. Yeah. But when, you know, majority of people are actually just fighting for it, that's the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole thing, I go back to what I said earlier. There's always you always see the end result, but there's always a background to something. And if the outcome of actually being an Olympian, making an Olympian, it gives you that credibility to then go out and do things. So you've got to actually take it on yourself to go out and utilize what you've got. And if that, you know, promotes other, you know, partners and sponsors or whatever it is, or jobs and whatever else, that's up to you then to go and do that. But it's nearly, you look at it the other way, it's like everyone kind of wanting it as easy as possible too.
Yeah, so you kind of have your cake and eat it too. Kind of
this is what it is. Deal with it, and you go and make the most of it the way you can. That's the way I look at it. I mean, you probably got some really, like, it's probably really valid points, but, you know, what's the point of if you're always trying to fight something, just get on with it, take what you've got and move on.
Well, that's the thing.
Make the most of it.
Yeah, and the people, like, it's like I said, I mean, I don't really have a dog in the fight. Like, I can have a look at it objectively, but I've never spent my life working towards the Olympics. I've never made the Olympic team. I've never got a medal at the, you know, so it's like, what is my opinion worth? Dog shit, really.
But we said early on, right? You got to do it for everything you want to do. If you want to be successful, you got to be doing it for the right reasons. So if the first reason is I'm worried about what money I can get out of the Olympics because, you know, my partners are on board or whatever else, well, you probably got your mind not on the right job, right? The first job of the Olympics is going there and racing,
being the athlete,
trying to win the gold medal, right? That's the priority. So it's really easy to say at the end of it, or in as an afterthought, oh well, we missed out on this and this and this and this. But the fact of the matter is, 10 years earlier, you're just training your butt off to be an Olympian, and then when the Olympics rolls around, if you're good enough to be there, you're training your butt off to try and win a gold medal.
Yeah,
that process is pretty simple.
Yeah,
and that's sport, right?
Yeah, and you don't have to. I guess you're not really thinking about the money, because it is like the prestige of being an Olympian is like. I think that's something no one could ever take away from you, I guess. I guess that especially for someone like yourself in these endurance sports and things like that, that's the highest. It's like almost like a medal of honor, really, in a way. Is like you earn this with all of the blood, the sweat, the tears, the miles. That's a badge that now nobody can take away from you. Yeah,
it's an endpoint, and like I said, there's a lot of people fight to get there, and there's a lot of great. There's stories over and over again about world champions who never actually, because it's only once every 4 years, they never actually even got to go to an Olympics. So great sports people miss out. It's just something special about the Olympics. And you know what? You kind of got to give props when they're due, right? And the Olympic movement is an amazing beast.
Yeah, true.
And in a weird way, they have the right to control their own. In the end, it's not a government organisation. It's arguably a private organisation running an event. It's their event to run. So, it's like you can have people fighting at it from all different directions, have their opinions and whatever else. In the end, it's their event. We all want to be part of it as athletes, and
I think
you deal with it. Like, I just don't see the point of whinging about it.
Yeah, your party analogy is pretty cool, because we've all paid to get into a nightclub. You know
exactly.
what I mean? Like, the nightclub's not like, hey, we'll divvy this money up equally.
Well, listen, the other side of it is, well, don't go.
Yeah.
I don't see athletes walking away from it.
Yeah, it was interesting because golf was in it for the first time at the last Olympics. And there was such a weird thing, because I think that this might be where the Olympics has to readjust some of their thinking, right? So you start getting like the Shaun Whites and Ryan Shecklers and Kelly Slaters, and like they've got deals that are like ironclad, worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like Rory McIlroy, one of the biggest golfers in the world, he didn't play in the Olympics because he's sponsored by Nike, and I think what was the brand that
his country,
the Irish team had to wear, like Reebok or something.
Yep.
And he just couldn't get around it. He's like, I would love to go to the Olympics, but I'm in a $15 million a year deal with Nike, and I can't put on Reebok. Sorry. So it's like but there's no room because it's Team Ireland. So it's not even like the team. I think there was one argument they were making was like, okay, well, let's make the Irish golf team be sponsored by Nike, and then the Reebok was like, well, we'll just pull the whole thing, and then Nike was like, well, we don't want to sponsor all of the Irish team, we just want Rory. So it's like that's going to be I think that will be a struggle if they want to get these big name guys that come from these huge sports, and they bring with them their endorsements, and they're pretty ironclad deals. So I think that might be the only sort of slippery slope when it starts getting into it.
Yeah.
The basketball players with their shoes as well, like LeBron James, like he ain't giving up Nike.
True. It's all valid, but I mean, in the end, that's for them to. That's what happens when it's moving on, and that's why I say I think it'll be a really interesting transition, because you're starting to bring sports in now that are established purely as a professional sport, and then you're trying to bring them into an amateur. Not an amateur, because I mean it's not amateur in the sense, but an amateur environment where you have to adhere to strict guidelines of rules, branding, and everything else. So that's going to be the whole challenge for the Olympics. But I'm just excited to see what happens, because I'm in one way I'm kind of glad I'm out of it now, and I get to see where the future goes. But if you take, for example, my daughter. Right, it can go on a little bit off topic here, but rock climbing is going to be in the next Olympics.
Yeah, she's been fully getting into that, huh?
So, maybe it's the process of how people get involved in sports. So she saw on TV, or on YouTube, I think, American Ninja Warrior, and the girls winning American Ninja Warrior were rock climbers. So she wanted to do rock climbing because of an American Ninja Warrior. the flip side of that is the rock climbing then became the Olympics, up until the point that I could kind of say, oh, but rock climbing is an Olympic sport. People would look at me like,
why are you pushing her rock climbing?
Well, not pushing. Why does she want to rock climb?
Yeah.
And as soon as I could say, oh, but rock climbing is an Olympic sport, it was nearly like, oh, okay, oh, that's all right.
Validation.
Then. It's like validation. So, like I said, you've got these action sports now that are going to get validated in the traditional sense of at the biggest, sporting event in the world. People are going to start to flock to these sports, and they're exciting. Like, I want to rock climb.
You've been doing a little bit of it with that, haven't you?
Mate, I'm hopeless. I can't even pull one up. I'm all legs. But the whole idea of, kids can now have a choice of, I suppose, sport that's fulfilling but also is exciting to them.
Yeah.
But that's where it gets dangerous, because for me, as a father, and this is again another topic, I then wonder, where does that kind of leave the whole idea of sport providing discipline? And you learn, in the traditional sense, you learnt a lot from sport for life. If you have trained from a young age, you learn structure, you learn discipline, you learn respect of coaches and older athletes and all of that. So there's a whole community that teaches you life through sport.
I think too, just to add to that, learning how to lose, because you're going to lose a lot in life. And I think that there's something that comes from sport is to lose a couple games doesn't necessarily mean you've lost the season. And I think that that's a super important thing with life is you might go through a couple of shitty years. That doesn't mean you're going to lose the game of life eventually. So I think that, being in sport from a young age teaches kids that it's okay to lose. There's going to be another game. There's going to be another, you know what I mean? So you're so right. There's so many lessons in sport.
Absolutely. But then you take these sports that are probably, I see action sport, which I've been, obviously being around Red Bull for 15, 20, 17 years or whatever. I've been, even though I've been a triathlete, I've been kind of ingrained in action sports as well, and have mates in those areas. You've got to say it's a bit looser.
Way looser.
So the whole idea of sport teaching you these values that, I'd say society hold pretty on a high pedestal. Then you've got action sport, which traditionally has been, the opposite, right?
Yeah.
It's about freedom.
It was counterculture.
Yeah, it's freedom, counterculture, but also just, kind of, sticking it up everyone. And then suddenly you've got kids in that area where does, I don't have the answer, but there's a question. Where does that then lead us as a society into a point where you've had
Scotty James is a good example. He just got a bronze or silver or silver at the half pipe. Yeah, we should know that. We've mentioned him so many times on the podcast already. But he's obviously a crazy gnarly athlete, but he ain't doing 100 road miles a week, and there's not a strict regime that he's kind of sticking to. So you are right. Yeah.
So and then you got it. So then the next question on from that is, how does some of these action sports coming into the Olympic environment and coming back to a more mainstream environment, how does that then affect their sporting culture? That's gonna have an impact.
Rub off.
It's gonna have an impact on their sports as well. So there's it's just a really interesting time, to go back to the start of what we started on with the podcast of, the whole idea of social media driving things and driving, new environments, and then you couple that with sport and bringing in, action sport and that into a traditional sense.
Yeah.
You're going to have this mix match of everything come, 5 or 6 years down the track. I think we're going to be sitting here talking about a whole different platform of sport.
Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't, until you've mentioned that hasn't been really on my mind at all. And it is going to be interesting because it is so different. And you're right, the reason action sports started is because it was all the dudes saying F team sports, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to go surf and be creative and express myself. Whereas for you guys, it was the reward came through extreme discipline and extreme amounts of punishment that, you could overcome. But I think there's something to be said for like, so with you, there's a certain mental game that you have to master to let yourself run for that long or swim that hard and just put yourself in this little suffer box. So there's a mental state that you have to get to. But then you look at like a Scotty James trying to do a crazy trick 30 feet above ice, like it's ice half pipe. Like that thing is hard. It's not soft snow. So there's a certain level of like that mental commitment there as well. So it's like they're very different in terms of like the discipline it takes, but there's still like there's some extreme mental capacity that the normal human doesn't have. So it's like there is, while it's not a, you know, traditional suffer and train kind of thing, to overcome what those dudes have to overcome to do those tricks is something special as well.
And skillful.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, you watch their training, how they've got to that, you know, that standard. It's no different in, you know, we're talking about structure. I mean, the structure's no different. They have to train. They have to, you know, be so athletic to be able to twist. And, you know, they are 100% elite sports. It's just different, right? There's, no matter which way you look at it, there's sport through pain. You know, that's the best word for it. I mean, it is painful. I mean, if you go down to a swimming pool here in Australia and watch, you know, training each morning, 5 a.m, there's no like, oh, I might just, you know, wait a little while or whatever, you know.
It's too cold.
It's 5 a.m, you know, in the pool on the dot, a coach on your back, you're doing laps, you're, you know, the lactic you're producing, you're putting kids through, well, sometimes it's hell.
Yeah.
But there's an outcome. You know, you're doing that. You're doing all that, so you got this final outcome that makes you feel so good if you can win that medal, win that race, and whatever else. So there's always, you kind of look at it like that. But the flip side is, you have friends doing, you know, with you when you're a kid. Yeah. You're in that culture. So if you're a swimmer in Australia, you've got all your mates. They become your mates. They become every day. So you don't know any different. And I think, you know, to people outside sport, they probably look at sports people who make it in the end and think, well, you've never had a life. And to an extent, I could agree with that. You are very sheltered. But the fact of the matter is, your mates and your kind of niche and the people you deal with in society, that's it. That's your life. So it's not good. It's not good or it's not bad. It's the fact that it is. And if you talk to a lot of kids who are in sport at a young age and have gone through that, they don't look back at them and think, oh, that was the worst life in the world. They loved it because you grew up doing that. Like now we'd go out and mountain bike as a group. It was no different. We went to the pool and swam as a group. It was just the fact the outcome was we were, you know, drilling ourselves day in, day out to try and achieve this goal in the end. But, you know, I think, all that being said, you're definitely wired a little bit different. You know, you're not going to get everyone out there who can just go out and be an endurance sport athlete. Yeah. And that's a whole different, you know, we're talking a whole different story. If you take Ironman Triathlon, for example, you've got a lot of people out there now achieving at Ironman Triathlon. So your everyday bloke in the office or female in the office might go out there and do an Ironman Triathlon, but there's still a very, very, very select few who go out there and race for 8 hours, like at their red line, completely destroying themselves. You know, you've got to be wired completely different to be in those scenarios. And I think that's what still probably separates true elite endurance athletes from the rest. And that's not just, you know, that's across the board, whether you're marathon running, cycling, whatever. There's something wired a little bit differently. Yeah, there has to be. Are you not like worried, but has it ever crossed your mind that like your kids might just have too big of a like boots to fill in a way, like when it comes to sport? Because like they're athletic, like you and your wife are super athletic, you're always doing stuff, like they're gonna be in sport because of the way that they've been brought up. Like you guys are just active people, but are you, like not worried, but does it cross your mind that like, oh man, maybe I've set the bar too high, like for my kids, and that, you know, like that might be a deterrent for them to go for something because you achieve so much? Not that there's pressure from you to make them do that, but to be honest, I think there's probably less pressure because I know the sacrifices it takes. I've seen, so I reckon I'm probably a little bit
Easier,
softer on them than what, you know, your average. If someone's invested in their kids getting into sport, I'm probably a little bit more blasé and a bit softer on them than what they would be, because I know I've been there, I've experienced it. I know, you know, to see it right through, and I'm talking about right through, like it becomes your life. That's a hard choice, and you know, it's not just a choice. You have to have the natural talent as well to do it. So it's not a given in any sense. But yeah, I think the answer is I'm a little bit probably on the other side of that. But the one thing I like with my kids, and yes, I want them to swim and I want them to run for the same reasons
that you get out of it.
I get out of it, and I'd like them to have the opportunities, if they want to in the future, to be able to do, you know, pursue those the things I've pursued if they wanted to. But by no means do I care if that happens or not, to an extent. You know, if, like my daughter Chloe rock climbs, I'd be more than happy. I can go and join her. You know, I'd rather go and do that myself now than be swimming up and down a pool. So, you know, I'd much rather be in those sports, but I just want them to try. I mean, in the end, kids should be trying a lot of sports. They shouldn't be specialising at such a young age. And if you're, you know, that old notion of golfers and tennis players is probably a whole different, you know, ball game of young prodigies going through. But in general, if you just looked at it as a, you know, a blanket, the kids who experience a lot of sports at a young age often find that eventually they find their niche and then follow through with that sport more so than a kid who's just pumped swimming from a, you know, 5 or 6, just pumped swimming, and by the time they're 13, you know, they've had enough.
Did you travel much outside of racing when you, I mean, not even just when you were younger, just like until you quit racing professionally? Did you get to travel much for fun, or is this, I guess, is that why you're enjoying this so much now? Is it like you're going to these places all over and, you know, you're still going there to thrash yourself basically, which is kind of in your comfort zone, but like did you not get to experience a lot of that travel when you were racing?
I mean, generally, if we raced, I mean, traveling the world, you saw a hotel and a race course.
That's exactly my experience with it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you really did. You'd fly in, you'd go to a hotel, you'd set up, you maybe train on the course around where you're going to race, you race, and then you're out there quick. I mean, every year, I'd always come home with my family through Asia and have a holiday, kind of a beachy holiday, and that was our main kind of summer holiday each year. But life's different I won't lie, like life was a lot different as a sports person. I mean, I was spending, in my later years at Olympic competition, I was spending 6 months here on the Gold Coast and then spending 6 months with my family living in France. And I was training my butt off, but the fact of the matter is we lived in a country town in France and just kind of cruised around. So when I wasn't training, we were literally living this holiday lifestyle. So it's not all bad by any means. Like, I mean, that was a pretty amazing life, and my daughter for her first 5 years grew up like as that, half here, half there. And I think to an extent, now that sport's over, we kind of miss that a little bit because life has a little bit more structure. Kids go to, you know, life goes on, kids go to school, life's got a little bit more structure. When I travel now, it's not necessarily to race, it's often for a job. So you can't really, it's not like rocking up to the office, you know, and sometimes I can, depending on what I'm doing, but it's not like you can just bring the family along to your job. And vice versa, if I'm, like we've alluded to, running up a mountain, I can't be, you know, they're not coming with me up a mountain, so it's pointless of them traveling. So my travel now is very niche in the sense that the outcome of what I'm doing, not a lot of people can do with me. And that's how all of this, you know, we go back to the beginning, this is how all of this outdoor stuff started for me. This whole idea of creating, I suppose, experience content in the outdoors is I'm often doing things that others just physically can't get cameras into, or drones or whatever it is. And two, they just don't have the you know, the physical capabilities to be in the places I am going that fast. So like what I can do in a day and get in and show people or run up to wherever I want to go, others might be taking 4 days to hike in there, and people want to shuttle in like massive cameras in helicopters or whatever, so they see one part where they can land a chopper. Whereas like the flip side is I might be running up a valley and I can show all the kind of nooks and crannies and the best parts of a valley that no one else gets to see, but I can do that in a day.
Yeah,
I'm not hiking and taking 5 or 6 days to do it. So like I said, that's what led me down this path of kind of what I do at the moment, and that's showing these experiences that are sometimes probably more on the extreme side of adventure, but at the same time I'm kind of showing people, oh, you can get out there and do this. There's no reason you can't go and do this. You're probably not going to do it at the pace I'm doing it, but there's no reason you can't go and see this if it tickles your fancy.
So what's on your bucket list? Like what's coming up? If you could do anything right now, what would be the thing that you would want to go do? Because we sort of half spoke about Everest a little bit at Az's place. Yeah, no.
Well, funny enough, another mountain climb, but more around. I can't say too much, but around more kind of like naturalists and are about the environment and looking at those types of things has come up around some mountains that I'm kind of getting pitched some really interesting opportunities which are way out of my wheelhouse at the moment, which is really exciting, but at the same time I'm still loving. I mean, I need to run, and I haven't completely. You're
not going to move away from those.
I haven't finished being an athlete. I mean, I'm still moving super fast, and I love training every day, and all those things. So until I'm kind of got that completely out of my system, I won't get onto these other things. But I don't have a bucket list, to be honest.
Just going to say yes to cool shit.
Mate, the best thing at the moment is people, they see what I do and then they come and pitch me their ideas, and often I just turn around. 9 out of 10 I kind of go, yeah. And then one will come up and you just go, oh, do you mind if I run with this? Because it's like, this is awesome. And that's how the whole idea of the mountain running project around Australia come up. Yep. I mean, it wasn't new. I'm not trying to sit here and say I invented it or anything. I mean, hikers have been doing it. They've been ticking these mountains off their bucket list over years, and they hike in and do whatever for years. We just took it and kind of made it.
Put your extreme twist on it.
Well, we just took it and went, let's just go and do it the way they do it, but let's see how quickly we can run up each of these mountains and just do it in a short amount of time, because that seems, a pretty cool thing to do, and seems interesting, and it's a challenge, because you look at it and you think, running up one day, like we're kind of running like half marathon pace, day in, day out at race pace, and the travel in between. It provided all of these kind of challenges to myself as an athlete of how do you recover, how do you eat, how do you sleep, all of these extra things that you'd never think about if you just had a one-off event. So that's what provided, I suppose, for me, that's what gets me excited about these types of things. So it has to be you might want to call it a project, but it has to be kind of like an idea or a project that I turn around and go, well, that gets me excited. Let's go and try it. So
that pushes some of those competitive buttons that are sort of really deep there.
Absolutely. And often that just can be just the terrain. When people we often say, oh, well, let's go and try and run there. I'm like, well, we don't really know what's up there, or, we've seen some people hiking and they've given us kind of half-baked photos of what it might be. Well, the whole enjoyment of it is when you get there and you finally see it. More often than not, I'd say 9 out of 10 times it's always better than what you think.
Yeah,
these places, because we're not just running out into any place for the sake of it. I mean, I'm sitting there on Google Maps. A story is probably one of my more successful I suppose locations. I ended up last year in Japan, which completely was unplanned. I was up in Japan actually doing some recon for a climber. So I was droning.
Because he was a fellow Red Bull guy,
yeah,
right?
So I was up there with up in Japan on on a place called Oki Islands, which is like these remote islands up north of Japan, and I was literally had my drone with me filming these places to try and work out where climbers could go. And I looked on Google Maps and I saw this, it's kind of like I knew a place out the back here of the Gold Coast that has a certain look to it on a map, and it's like just a thin line, and that often just says there's a major kind of rock ridge there. And 9 out of 10 times you'll never see them because you'll just pass over them and they just look like a mistake on Google Maps. I saw one on this island and I thought, perfect, we'll get up there. So I got a local guide to get me into the area where it was, because I had no idea how to get there, where it was, even if it existed, if it wasn't a glitch.
Even if it wasn't just a glitch.
We didn't know. But my idea was I'd get out there and run across it. When we got there...
Did they tell you, like, when you said to the guides, like, this is where I want to go, were they going like, no, or like, did they have any feedback for you, like, did they just not even know what was up there?
Well, they didn't speak English first, so if they did, I didn't really realise or not. But when we got there, we finally got up and bush bashed through up to this kind of ridge line, and the top of the ridge was my hand size. It was like nothing I'd seen. There was nothing else in the environment like it up there, but it was just this one ridge jutting out and the size of my hand. And in hindsight, it was just kind of a bit dumb without ropes on and stuff like that. But we were there, and like we said, it's all about, you just...
That would have looked so good to you.
You're pumped up and you're like, I'm here, I've got these guys have brought me out. So we just went out and, went across it. And in the I suppose in hindsight, people love the idea of seeing things that have a bit of danger, right? I mean, it's more exciting than just running along a road.
I'd say that had more than a bit of danger. Like, how far down did that go? Like, it was over if you fell. Like, there's just no way around it.
Yeah, I mean, there were cliffs, yeah. It was
how far you reckon?
Maybe 150 metres or whatever. But, I mean, it was simple climbing. It's like that old kind of story of, you put a bit of a log across between two rocks. If you put it on the ground and walk it, no trouble. Yeah. You put it 4 foot in the air and suddenly, you're wobbling and whatever else. I mean, the same idea is no matter where you are, if that was on the ground out here in the car park, I would have done it every day of the year. It was just the fact that you're up 100, 200 metres. But the thing to me was just the actually environment. I'd never seen anything like it. It had literally was probably, I don't know, maybe a good 250 metres long of this rock jutting out of like nowhere, but it finished to the point of the size of your hand and just in a top. And, it was crazy. I could kind of skirt along holding, on the edge and skirt along a little bit, and there was a few drops we had to jump across and things like that. But to me, it was just the fact that we'd found something that we had no idea of what it was, and the excitement of that then drove me to do it.
Yeah.
I look at it now and go, well, it's great we did it, but
probably wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. No.
But you'd have to think like no one would have ever done that before. Like, know what I mean? Like, what's the odds that someone's climbed out onto the edge of that?
Wow, you don't know. I have no idea. I mean, someone may have done it, may have not, and that's the beauty of this whole. I'm not out there saying. There's not much out there that hasn't been done these days, like especially from the point of view of people hiking in and finding areas or locations. Yeah. What I suppose I provide is I can film it in a reasonably semi-professional way to show it without, you see a lot of footage these days of people just going in and with GoPros and it's just all over the place. I mean, we, through years and years of being around production crews, it's kind of like I've got an idea of what will work. Obviously, the invent of small drones has helped massively to kind of just show an overview of the location instead of just showing GoPro of what you're actually on. But the main thing is, I'm not trying to say this is the first time done. I'm just bringing it to a bigger audience,
just an
right?
Audience, yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, we've kind of sometimes we cop a little bit of backlash because there's people out there who've done it, but then we go ahead and kind of, I suppose,
like showcase it.
Yeah, like take it put it in a package in a way that people look at it and go, oh wow, and they kind of, it's their first time, like the audience we're showing it to, it's their first time they've seen it. So I can fully understand that sometimes people who've actually been there are like, "But oh, hang on, we've done this, but what can you do? Don't ever go anywhere that someone's already been." We try and find obviously new spots, but I often see. I mean, that's how we get our inspiration too. I look at other sports, and it might be, you know, like I see Johnny Duran Jr., our Red Bull hang glider here in Australia, you know, he might fly over a certain location and I'll look at it and go, oh, perfect. You know, that's one I'm going to just jot down, and, you know, we might end up there going out there and exploring by foot a little bit later. Hikers have probably gone through there, taken a few photos, whatever else, but we'll go in there and try and do something, you know, put our own spin on it.
Yeah. And what I was going to say, like, how much did that Japan clip help your career in a way? Was there like a big sort of career benefit that came from that, where people, because I mean, it went pretty nuts on Red Bull's Facebook page. So like, was there a pretty positive follow-on effect from that clip?
Well, I think it's just putting yourself in new environments, right? It's not, and as an elite athlete, this is the worst thing I could possibly say, but doing these kind of, I suppose, adventure style things are way more memorable than me winning, you know, major races around the world. Races, it's just every time, but people, like, if I walk down and meet someone, the first thing I'm kind of getting these days is like, I've seen that stuff you're doing, that running stuff, and I'll ask them, well, what's your favourite? And 9 out of 10 times it'll be either, you know, something dangerous, like looking, well, at least looking dangerous, right? I saw you bungee jumping a mountain bike, which in effect isn't dangerous, but, you know, people saw it, they remember it. Racing.
Well, I
it's
think
just
maybe,
racing. I don't know. What's the answer to that? I mean, I kind of scratch my head sometimes and go,
I think
why?
that it's attainable to go into the wilderness with a camera and take a cool photo or take a GoPro in, but like, I don't think people can relate in the same way to like a crazy triathlon. So I think people can be impressed by it and see it for what it is, but I don't think that there's an element of like wanderlust. Like, I don't have wanderlust for watching you cross the finish line in a triathlon. Like, I just don't, because what you immediately associate that with is all the training, pain in your legs, running, and all of the stresses of being in a competitive environment. So I look at that and I'm like, that's fucking impressive. But I'm not looking at that going, I really want to do that. On the other hand, like with, say, the Japan thing, I'm looking at that completely impressed by it. But there's also that element of like, man, maybe I could do something like that one day. And, you know, a lot of people will never do that, right? But there is more of you have more of a capability of sitting at your computer and getting a little bit of escapism through that, you know, living vicariously through that kind of experience than a triathlon. I think they're both equally as impressive in terms of what it takes to do it. And the triathlon stuff more so, probably. But yeah, I think it's just that element of relatability to people. People can go and experience that. Or even on a smaller scale, like they could watch that clip and fire up and go, this weekend I'm going to go to Byron and I'm going to go do the Lighthouse Trail.
Yeah. Recreation, right? Yeah. In the end, it's and then that's why I'm glad to be in this industry. I'm super stoked that I went from and I keep saying went from. I mean, the fact of the matter is I'm still racing. Like, again, I just finished racing and I'll, you know, come April, I'm running one of the major I'm training at the moment for one of the major trail races in Australia. But in between all that, I'm just stoked that I'm kind of promoting something that can have benefits for everyone, not across the board of health, but also just, you know, headspace of actually getting out of there, getting away from the, you know, the whole city lifestyle and getting out in nature a bit. And, you know, if I'm only kind of skewing the view of, you know, a few people each time to actually get out there and experience something different, I'm doing my job all right, eh?
That's it. All right, mate. Well, we'll wrap it up. I really appreciate your time. I know that you're a very busy dude, so I'll let you get out of here. I've enjoyed the convo, mate. Appreciate it.
I have too. Thanks for having us, James.
No drama. See you, mate.